A quote often attributed to the famous ancient Indian strategist Chanakya says, "If you feed a snake milk, you increase its capacity to produce venom, not nectar." Pakistan would have been wise to follow these words, because now its policy of good terrorists and bad terrorists has boomeranged violently. Pakistan has tried to represent itself as a victim of terrorism. Pakistan claims to have made huge sacrifices to defeat the monster of violence and terrorism in the country. However, the truth is that the unholy nexus of the Pakistani civil government, military establishment, and Islamic clerics have paved the way for the creation of a new, more radicalized society. How has Islamabad been able to play victim when some of the world's most wanted terrorists have been caught hiding in the country? Let's take a look at some of the politics at play.
If you have snakes in your backyard, you can't expect them to bite only your neighbors. Eventually, they will bite the people who keep them in the backyard.
Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar recently criticized Pakistan for harboring terrorists and reminded the country that it will have to face the effects of homegrown extremism. Unfortunately, Pakistan, as expected, has not heeded Jaishankar's advice and is suffering the consequences. Several jihadi outfits, who had always been priceless assets of the Pakistani government and military, have now emerged as a serious security threat for Islamabad.
Pakistan's sort of strategy of 1,000 cuts for India and other nations, and this whole fact that there's been a normalization of using groups such as Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, the Harkat-ul-Jihadi Islami, and all these kinds of groups that are linked to Al-Qaeda. Pakistan has basically put the globe in a precarious situation.
This potential threat was first identified 8 years ago, when the intensity and cruelty of the attack on the Army Public School in Peshawar by the Tehrik-e-Taliban shocked the entire world. Pakistan has since witnessed many more attacks on educational institutes, such as the 2016 assault on the Bacha Khan University and the burning down of schools in Gilgit-Baltistan's Daimar district in 2018. Last year's Taliban victory in Kabul, which was facilitated by Islamabad, emboldened several Islamist groups in Pakistan, including the TTP. Following the surge in several terror attacks claimed by the TTP, the Pakistani government has also attempted to reach an agreement with the jihadist group. However, last month, the TTP ended the month-long ceasefire agreement with Pakistani authorities and began launching terrorist attacks again all over the country.
Pakistan always believes that the neighborhood should be unstable. Given this belief, Pakistan has always thought that if the Taliban of Afghanistan comes to power in Kabul, it will benefit from the same. However, it has not realized so far that if you breed instability in other countries, that instability can have a backlash in your own country.
Several analysts inside and outside of Pakistan have criticized the Pakistani government for giving concessions to the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. These analysts have opined that Pakistan's morally impractical practice of negotiating with the radical groups legitimizes terrorist aims. Successive governments in the Islamic Republic have always flirted with dangerous religious fanatics festering across Pakistan and aiding the growth of international terror organizations. These terror organizations have now mutated into two categories. One wing targets democracies like India, the United States, and the European Union, while the other practices a violent insurgency in Pakistan itself to establish a puritanical, violent order that intends to wipe out the last vestiges of civilized Pakistani society. Pakistan has lost thousands of lives in the country, but still, the country has not changed its strategy. Failing to persecute several leaders of UN-proscribed terror groups, and even going as far as to ensure their protection, Pakistan is directly assisting the burgeoning Islamic terrorist threat in the country. Pakistan has long failed to take appropriate action to combat terrorism within and outside of the country. The country is now facing the consequences of its inaction, and those suffering the most continue to be Pakistani citizens. Rafat and Hasti, these two university students in Kabul, are heartbroken as their dreams have been shattered after the Taliban-run administration suspended women from tertiary education. Rafat and Hasti are worried about their futures as all their hopes, plans, and dreams have been shattered.
وقتی که سنفیای من برای من گفتن خب واقعا خیلی گریه کردم. اما دفعتا موادهای درسی همه پیش رویم بود و شب تا صبح ما همه دوستا بیدار بودیم، اصلا خواب به چشم ما نمی آمد. زمانی که صبح شد ما فکر کردیم دیگر زندگی و خانم‌ها در افغانستان وجود نداره، چون همه راه ها و چیزایی را که ما به خاطر تحقق رویاها و اهداف ما می‌پیمودیم بر ما بستن.
The scenes outside universities in Afghanistan turned emotional as soon as the Higher Education Ministry announced the decision to bar women from attending classes. Many students expressed their anger at the Taliban, who swept to power in August of 2021. The Taliban initially promised that any progressive achievements would not be reversed and that their rule would be moderate. However, they have failed to live up to their promises. In Jalalabad city, for example, a protest was held outside the university. Protesters held signs and chanted slogans attempting to seek justice. The ban on women students is likely to complicate the Taliban administration's efforts to gain international recognition and to remove sanctions that are severely hampering Afghanistan's economy. The recent decision to ban women has drawn condemnation from foreign governments and the United Nations.
What it is, it's clearly another broken promise from the Taliban. We have seen since their takeover, and also in the past months, just a lessening of the space for women, not only in education, but access to public areas, their non-participation in the public debate. It's another very troubling move, and it's difficult to imagine how a country can develop, can deal with all of the challenges that it has without the active participation of women and the education of women.
The Taliban's decision to restrict women from education drew fierce rebuke from the G7 and even the Arab world. India also condemned the Taliban's decision and said New Delhi has consistently supported women's education in Afghanistan. The United States said that a change in policies on women's education is needed before it can formally consider recognizing the Taliban-run administration in Kabul.
The reality on the ground, more than 1 year after the Taliban takeover, is dire. The Taliban has restricted the enjoyment of human rights by women and girls. This includes their right to education, movement, and peaceful assembly, as well as women's right to work.
According to the United Nations, human rights violations against women and girls have increased significantly in Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover. It said the Taliban has systematically excluded women and girls from public life, and has failed to fulfill its initial promises of providing rights to women within Sharia law. In May of 2022, the Taliban decreed that women must cover their faces in public and instructed them to remain in their homes except in cases of necessity. Women are also banned from traveling long distances without a male chaperone, and unchaperoned women are increasingly being denied access to essential services. Barring women from higher education is another nail in the coffin for the long-suffering women of Afghanistan.